Good evening, everyone. It's a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being audio and video recorded. Let me introduce members of the committee who are here. From Ward 1, we have Maria Greenberg. From Ward 2, President Albright. From Ward 4, that's me, Josh Krinsman, Chair of the Programs and Services Committee. From Ward 6, Vice Chair, Councilor Brenda Noel. From Ward 7, Councilor Lyle Baker, and from Ward 8, Councilor Holly Ryan. Councilor Downs, do you want to introduce your committee members now, or you want us to do our first appointment and then go into the joint portion?
Why don't you do your first appointment, then we'll go into it.
Okay, first item on the Programs and Services Committee agenda is item 4823. This is the appointment of Ruth Goldman to the Urban Tree Commission. Good to see you here, Ms. Goldman. The standard operating procedure for the committee is to give you a couple of minutes to tell us why you are interested in being a member of the Urban Tree Commission. I'll then open it up to committee members or any counselors who are here to ask questions, and then we'll proceed to a vote. So Ms. Goldman, hi.
Hello. Well, I'm happy to see all of you in a very different role from my previous one. I think after a much needed break last year, I wanted to serve the city in a very different capacity. And since my kids are now fully graduated from the Newton Public Schools, I thought I'd turn my attention really to probably my longest personal passion, which is urban environmental sustainability. And, just really reached out to the mayor and folks and just said, what do you need? Thinking about parks and recreation and trees. And she said, we need someone on the tree commission. So I think most of you know, I spent the early part of my career actually leading wilderness trips, spent a lot of time with a lot of different kinds of trees in a lot of different environments. So I sort of know a lot about them personally. And then the last 20 years have really been focused on urban environmental sustainability through community gardens, parks, greenways, other kinds of green space, mostly in communities that don't look like Newton. So just very, very familiar with, how trees are part of the overall urban sustainability equation, just, keeping our air clean, keeping our water clean, really in a lot of ways, just the social, they help people gather, help people build community, provide much needed shade. They're beautiful. There's lots of evidence that people who live close to parks and open space, as well as just actually live close to trees, are happier and healthier. And that goes for people who live in Newton and people who live in places that don't look anything like Newton. So I'm a big fan of all of it, and just really just want to serve the city in a capacity that makes sense. So this one seemed to fit the bill. So here I am.
Fair enough. Thank you. I was not aware of your history, so it was helpful for me to see the resume and learn actually how extensive your experience was. So quite impressive. Let me first mention that we've been joined by Councilor Bill Humphrey, who is also a member of the committee. And if Councilor Wright joins us, I will mention that. I see 3 hands up. President Albright. Councilor Wright is here. We have a full complement from Ward 3, Councilor Pam Wright. Welcome, Councilor Wright. President Albright, you have a question.
Good evening, Ms. Goldman. I want to tell you how thrilled I am that you're willing to continue to serve the city. It's fabulous. And as an aside, I think we could use some of your skills to lead us through the wilderness right here in Newton right now. So I'm going to come after you for that after the meeting. I'm not going to nominate you because I know Councilor Noel would want to, but I'm so glad that you're willing to serve.
Well, thank you. That's very kind, Councilor Albright.
And a very nice segue. Councilor Noel.
Thank you. So I'm so excited about Ms. Goldman's candidacy, and I didn't even know. I mean, I've spoken to her in the past couple of weeks about this skill set that I'm so excited that she's going to contribute to the city in this way. And as a Ward 6 colleague, I'm happy to move this when folks are ready.
Thank you. Councilor Baker?
So I also support it, but just want to use the opportunity to tell everybody I'm having technical problems. So my voice is coming through an iPhone and the image is coming through my computer. So I'll have to do a bit of a dance step to make sure I catch everything. So bear with me. Thanks.
But kudos to you, sir. It is working. It is effective. You unmuted the right thing. You like nailed it. Like a Zoom veteran. Kudos to you, sir.
But I want to see Counselor Baker dance.
Councilor Maliki? See, unfortunately, you need a lesson from Councilor Baker on how to unmute.
Sorry. Okay, I thought there'd be more questions from the committee. Thanks, Ruth. It was nice to see you at the last, I think, couple, I missed the last meeting, but the couple before that you were at. I do have a couple of questions. This is going back a bit, but back in when you were on the, chairing the school committee, December 2018, the school committee had to vote to approve the 7 more schools getting solar panels. And at that time, I was very concerned with the trees that were going to be cut down for solar at different locations. And after the fact, I listened to the school committee meeting, and there was exactly one question from Margaret Albright: will any trees be cut? She was told, yes, but the diameter inches will be replaced. And that was the extent of the discussion. And the committee voted unanimously, basically, to rubber stamp the proposal without asking, what size trees and where. They included 36-inch red oaks, one at Ainger School, one at Oak Hill Middle School, basically all the trees in the Bigelow School parking lot, and various other trees at different schools, including Williams along Grove Street, the Brown Middle School parking lot, whole lot of big trees. They ended up pretty much not getting cut because the administration backed off on some of them, realizing that it wasn't going to impact the solar output that much. And it turned out this not Amoresco, the other company, Macquarie, turned out not to be very reliable, and the Bigelow Middle School roof wasn't in good enough shape to commit to putting solar on it. So that saved those trees. But I was very disturbed at the lack of curiosity among the school committee members about what the impact was going to be. So I just wondered if you had any recollection or thoughts about that.
I don't honestly recollect. I recollect voting on various solar panel arrays, particularly, honestly, the ones on places like the Newton South parking lot. And we did hear about what the impact was on trees. And quite honestly, I know the parking lots at the schools, and I'm sort of surprised that there were actually, for example, the Newton South parking lot and the Oak Hill parking lots are really bare of trees. So I'm sort of surprised that the tree cutting was a part of the presentation, is my recollection. And the trees that would have been impacted, if any, were, really not significant trees. And I do think, when you're looking at sustainability, you need, and accessibility and urban areas, you need to balance, the need for solar panels, which can provide, can really help clean the air and provide, a clean energy source. And frankly, sometimes relieve communities that aren't Newton of the burden of burning, for example, coal and gas power plants. So I think you have to kind of think a little more holistically. And then, frankly, not every tree is created equal, as you indicate. Large trees in good health that are native species are far more valuable than, some of the, Norway maples that are springing up on the hill across the street from me. Or just some of the scrub bush that's over there that frankly is crowding out what could be a better forest. So I don't recall that level of tree was impacted. And I do remember mostly talking about Newton South and Oak Hill and Brown, which are actually in areas that have very few large trees, the parking lots anyway. So I don't, I remember the library discussion more, although we were aware of it, but we didn't vote obviously on the library.
And this South was actually, I believe that was phase 2. That was an earlier phase. But it just, I listened to that school committee meeting, and there was just not, I don't even recall any presentation about what trees they were going to be cut. And there was just no question.
The other thing that possibly happened was that often we had a series of presentations. So if you didn't listen to all the presentations and you listened to the voting presentation, you could have missed the presentation that covered off on, the specifics of the tree canopy. So I just don't, I know those areas, I can't quite, I know that, so I don't recall ever hearing about those kind of trees. And I think at the point that we voted, we had gotten a lot of information.
Councilor Maliki, you all set?
I'd just like to make one other comment. I'm kind of surprised, surprised and not surprised that the mayor told you we need people on the Urban Tree Commission, which we do because there's 5 vacancies, but I know of at least 2 people who have applications been pending for, in one case since January 2022, and a second person for at least 6 months, and they haven't been gotten to. So I kind of would like to, this is your committee, not my committee, but I wish you would make sure that all people who have applied have, gotten a hearing. And, there's precedent in past batches of committee nominations where you do a bunch of people at a time. And I'd love to see you sort of, do the whole package when.
Yeah, we take up appointments as soon as they're made, as quickly as possible. If you have a concern about individuals not being appointed or selected, it's more a question for the mayor's office, but we do try to take, you're right, we do try to take them up in batches or for a particular committee when they come up, or commission.
It just seems like, having somebody kind of leapfrog over past, quite qualified people is kind of disturbing. But that's your committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Baker, just want to let you know your hand is still up. Councilor Greenberg, I have you next, followed by Councilor Lipoff. Councilor Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to acknowledge how fortunate we are as a city to have Ruth Goldman continue to serve our city in this new capacity. I really appreciate what she's done for the school. Looking forward to her work on the Urban Tree Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Greenberg. Councilor Lipoff, Vice President Lipoff, excuse me. Vice President Lipoff.
That's fine, thank you. I think that these appointments are made at the discretion of the mayor. And I think she's made a fine choice, not only because of Ms. Goldman's background serving the city, but everything that she's described in her love of this subject matter and experience. And I just want to thank you. People who step up and want to give of their time like this, first and foremost, we must say thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Noel, I believe your hand is up for a particular reason, and I welcome it.
I'm up again. So I just want to piggyback on what Councilor Lipoff said, and I feel the need to defend my colleague and my chair. I don't think there was any oversight on this. I think that there's a role. I mean, there's reasons why it's good to be mayor, and I think that this is under the purview of the mayor, and I don't think there was anything inappropriate or that you delayed anything. I think that the process worked how the process works. And again, I am happy to move this if it's time.
It is time. Councilor Noel has moved approval. Any discussion on that motion? Seeing no hands, I will mention that I am also pleased to support this appointment, this nomination. I think Ms. Goldman is a fine selection. I am also grateful that she's willing to give even more of her time to the city than she already has. So I will be supportive of this as well. So with that, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, that's 8-0. Ms. Goldman, this will be forwarded on to the full city council to be taken up at our next full council meeting. And you are more than welcome to stick around, but we also will not be offended if you close your laptop and go into the other room.
Thank you, Councillor Krinsman. I appreciate all your time and effort. And hello to everybody. Do I need to be at that city council meeting or someone?
No, you do
will-
not.
Okay, all right.
Nope.
Thank you all. I love you all, but I do have other things to go to tonight. So thank you. Have a
Fair
good
enough.
meeting. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Have a good night. Okay, the next item on our agenda is our first joint item. So let me quickly give Councillor Downs an opportunity to introduce her committee, and then I'll introduce the joint item.
Hey, so this is also the regularly scheduled Public Safety and Transportation meeting. Present at this point, and I may be missing somebody, is I'm going to go in reverse order. From Ward 8, Councillor Lipoff, who's also Vice President. From Ward 7, Councillor Rebecca Grossman. From Ward 5, there's me, Andrea Downs. From Ward, I don't believe Councillor Markowitz is, oh, there you are, Councillor Markowitz, who is from Ward 4, is also our Vice Chair. From Ward 3, Councillor Julia Maliki. From Ward 2, Councillor Tariq Lucas. And from Ward 1, Councillor John Oliver.
Thank you. If there are other councillors here who we haven't mentioned, feel free to raise a hand or let us know, but I think we've gotten all the councillors. The joint item is 108-22. This is requesting a report as to the implementation of the leaf blower landscaper registration and enforcement. Mr. Yo, are you going to take this up, or Mr. Lojek? I wasn't sure who was going to lead off.
Yes, so I'm going to have John, Commissioner Lojek, lead this. I believe we have Jonah Temple here from the Law Department.
Yes.
We've done a tremendous amount of work. Thank you to Councillor Baker, who we have met with and discussed and bounced ideas off of regarding how this program is implemented in 2023. And we think we made a lot of progress during 2022. And the commissioner will go into that and explain where we've come from and then what we're planning on doing this coming year. So, Commissioner.
Commissioner Lojek, it's yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. So we have done quite a bit of work in the off season, assessing what's been going on and what we're doing and its effectiveness and so on. Councilor Baker has been kind enough to meet us a couple of times to make suggestions and help us along the way. We changed the ordinance, of course, so that this year there'll be no more warnings to people who were given warnings in the past. So contractors who got warnings last year, that was their warning. There'll be no more this year. It'll go straight to a $300 fine. We have also just, we started today, I believe today and yesterday, or maybe today, tomorrow, putting out a mailing to all of the contractors who were registered and to contractors who weren't registered that got tickets, and to any homeowner who had a fine assessed at their property that explained the ordinance yet again. So there's a letter and the new brochure. We redid the brochure and added some things to it. So they're all getting that in the next few days. We have the stickers in hand. We're asking that all of the contractors to, as of the 15th, I believe it is, start registration. So that's where we are with registration and so on. We feel very much that last year was a very successful year. We wrote an awful lot of tickets and warnings. We wrote about $64,000 worth of tickets. And over the course of the year, we did see a big, I'd say a substantial change in the behavior of a lot of contractors. Some of them decided to go all electric. Some of them, have both sets of equipment because they don't just work in Newton. Some of them just got much better at getting away fast. But our leaf blower enforcement guy, Chuck Edrahai, I think was very, very effective. He worked on a very random schedule. He was never in the same place at the same time twice. I know a lot of people try to time that up to make sure they can avoid him. But Chuck, as a former police officer, is very effective at what he does. And we had obviously writing that many tickets had a pretty banner year. But over the course of the year, we did see quite a bit of change in behavior. And this year, I think, will be far more effective when they realize we're not going away. So basically, that's the update on where we are. We're gearing up right now to get going and start with the notifications. Chuck is going to come in and meet with us in the next week or so. And he's going to be getting going on his organization. We're working on a couple of other technical items like a hip mount, like the meter maids or the meter people write tickets and they come out of a printer that's right on their hip. And we're trying to figure out a way to incorporate that into what he does. It would save an awful lot of time. And we've also linking that into the NewGov system. So we're working on that. Hopefully that'll get going right at the beginning of the year. And we're going to be a NewGov in any case. All this information will be entered into the new system, but we're trying to get the tickets being entered automatically through the printer system and so on. So that's where we are. It'll make it a lot easier to do reporting and reports for people who are inquiring.
Commissioner,
Thank you, Commissioner Wojcik. I want to also say that the information that you provided was very helpful, was very interesting. Mr. Yu, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. I also want to just acknowledge that Chief Carmichael has joined us. I know you've had quite a busy week. I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be with us tonight, especially if there are any questions. So Mr. Yu, you wanted to provide some sort of an update as well?
Thank you. I was just going to also say that Chief Carmichael was here. Thank you. Mr. Temple, if you could quickly just sort of explain, we've had a decent percentage of the landscapers who are assessed fines did not pay. And so, John, if you could sort of explain sort of what our next steps have been on that front. Thank you.
Sure. So we've identified the kind of the worst offenders in terms of unpaid tickets, and that represents about $15,000 in unpaid fines. So following our typical procedure for enforcement, the law department has sent out last chance demand letters. As a result of that, we've received just this week an additional $5,000 that was outstanding. And sorry. And then from there, we are going to be filing criminal complaints in district court to collect the remaining $10,000 that's outstanding.
How many different companies does that represent? The 10,000.
I had an email. I will get you all that information.
Okay.
Yeah, we can summarize that for you. It was I would say 24 firms or so, but we'll get you that information. Some just hadn't paid anything, and then there are some that just maybe missed one fine. So it's different types of situations. And also, I think it's important, Commissioner, to mention that those landscapers that have not paid, that have a lot of fines still outstanding, we were planning on not allowing them to register. So I don't know, Commissioner, if you want to say where we are with that. So you have a list of who they are, so.
Right. We're simply going to tell people if they haven't paid their fines, they're certainly not allowed to register and therefore work with leaf blowers in the city of Newton. It is our law. We have to enforce it. And if we don't, well, they'll just all scoff us. So we are informing them that until they pay their fines, they can't re-register for 2023.
Right, and we would also let the police department know which landscaping firms were really outstanding and not registered. So to the degree that the police department can help locate any of those landscaping firms that were conducting leaf blowing operations in the city, they could help in moving these people towards compliance. So.
And Chair, just to answer your question, there are 16 different landscapers on our list that represent the $15,000 outstanding.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I see a number of questions from counselors. Are we at that point, or was there any other information you wanted to present, either from you, Chief Carmichael, or anyone else? Okay, hearing none. I have Counselor Baker followed by Malachy. Counselor Baker?
Let me see if this works. Are you,
Yep.
can you hear
Yep.
me?
Yep.
Okay, I'm on two different devices, colleagues. And first, thanks, Mr. Yo. Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Chief. We hope your two officers are okay. I know they were, we're all concerned about them. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
There are a couple of things, just additional background that I think may be helpful. The spreadsheet you got, which I very much appreciate distributing in advance, is organized by date. And what I'm curious about as going forward is the ability to sort by company. And there are some gaps in there, I noticed, from areas that I'm familiar with where information is missing, but where I think Mr. Urardi has, not Urardi, excuse me, has put in a phone number, and those are the landscaper numbers, right? Phone numbers. I'm sorry.
Commissioner,
am I breaking up?
Commissioner, no, we can hear you, Counselor. Commissioner, I believe those were phone numbers for the landscapers, right? Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Yes,
my
they are.
understanding.
Yeah.
So I think one of the opportunities that this kind of data collection provides is not only to sort by address, but sort by time, sort by company, and so forth, to assist the long run kind of enforcement pattern that will enable the most wise use of the limited resources that the city has. There was one idea that came up in our conversation, Mr. Yo, that I thought was ingenious. If you can talk a little bit about it, and Commissioner, about the way of using NewGov, so that part of the difficulty when citizens report something to the police, the time lag that sometimes occurs between the police being able to respond and the landscapers doing their work is, but if those incidents can be reported somehow on NewGov so that that becomes information, so that inspectional services officer, when he's going out, at least knows a pattern, that would be helpful. Can you comment on that possibility?
John, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe our NewGov system would be able to, well, we can sort it by any way you want. But the fact is that we plan on having the time and date, and then we can, our officer, well, Chuck Edrahai, can then decide when he's going to go certain places, and much easier to catch people doing the wrong thing. So, yeah.
But can citizens enter that, Edrahai?
I mean, the whole system will work much better as we get up and running even more.
Yeah, but I believe, John, that there is, and we'll get a link to everybody. I believe that they were setting up that reporting mechanism based on your good thought on that topic, Counselor.
Yep.
Because it would be helpful to provide that kind of information to Chuck and to Andy as they do enforcement.
Okay, thank you. Let you yield to some of my colleagues. I'll come back with some other things later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Commissioner Wojcik, I just want to mention your internet keeps sort of going in and out. I don't know if you want to try turning off your video. It might help with the continuity of the audio. up to you. But we love looking at you. I'm just trying to be helpful here so everyone can understand what you're saying.
You're a rarity, Counselor. I'll try that.
Counselor- Thank you. Counselor Maliki, followed by Counselor Ryan. Counselor Maliki?
Thanks. I was going to say the same thing about Mr. Luch's audio. Oh God, so many questions. First of all, I share Councilor Baker's interest in trying to do different sorts. So I had asked, could we get this in an Excel format, so that way I could like shrink the empty columns and do different sorts. One
Yes,
question
we can get that to you.
Great, okay. One question I had, okay, how do the police department officers and the and Mr. Drahe, am I saying it right, know if each other have issued warnings or violations for a particular company kind of in real time, this so that the cumulative, if they accumulate multiple violations, that's reflected?
Well, the police feed the information back to us when they do have stops and or tickets, and we keep it all on a single sheet. Deb Fenimore, my administrative assistant, does all that. And so that's how we do it. They report to us what they have done, and she just keeps it all in one place.
Okay, so you're the consolidator, and then
Oh, yeah.
so the police officer writing the ticket or the violation notice doesn't write in the fine. The fine would be determined by you.
Now, the fine is singular, it's $300 fine.
Okay,
We changed that last year.
Okay, so it doesn't affect, but
You don't have to wonder.
three, am I correct that 3 violations results in a suspension?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you would be the one keeping track if somebody has hit the 3.
Yep, yep.
Okay. Why did some fines get dismissed? What kind of stuff goes on at that stage?
Well, I can defer to Jonah on that, but the hearing officer at the court, when people appealed it to the court, that that's their decision when they hear the case. It's the hearing officer's decision as to how it is handled and how it's settled. So he thought that they weren't given fair warning or whatever it was.
And that's at Newton District Court?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to add a little more context there, Counselor, I think probably about 75% of the appeal tickets have been upheld, and probably closer to 90% recently. In the early period, some tickets were thrown out because the magistrate bought some arguments that they didn't have knowledge of the ordinance or that their employees didn't give the operator the ticket. But at this point, those arguments aren't being successful.
Okay, and that's those percentages are of the percent that get appealed, and some don't even get appealed.
Right. No, I believe only about 50-ish tickets were appealed last year.
Okay, and on the table you gave us where it says it's like a vision test here, where it says unknown landscaping company. Is that because it's just some guy out with leaf blowers and he has no company at all?
I believe
Go ahead, John.
those I think were police responses where they got, by the time they got there, they were, the landscaping firm was gone, or whoever was making noise, it was gone. So I think those ones where it says unknown are probably the police responses.
Okay, and
Counselor Maliki, why don't we do one more question, then let me give a couple other counselors a chance, okay?
Okay. We have a list on the city website of licensed operators, correct? For the public to consult so that they know they're using somebody who's complying with the rules. Can we note that on that page, the ones that are owing us money as non-compliant, so people can know to avoid those? I just would like to be able to reward the ones that are complying and not,
It's a good question. I think the plan this year is we're going to start a new list for those who are registered for 2023. Those who haven't paid fines, they're not going to be allowed to be registered. So we're going to keep one list going. I don't know, Deb. No, thank you, Deb, for joining us tonight. We'll be keeping one list. We'll get rid of the 2022 registration and we'll start with a 2023 list. And then also we're going to be doing an outreach. My colleague Ellen Ishkanian is still here working away. We're going to be doing some outreach through the mayor's update and other ways to remind homeowners that they need to use a registered landscaping service if they're going to do leaf blowing on their property. So we're going to use a variety of ways to get that information out, because if we start writing tickets to homeowners who are continuing to use unregistered landscapers, I think you all are going to hear too from them. So we want to notify everyone.
I think that's true. I think the wording, just be careful. I think homeowners aren't required to use registered landscapers, but they're certainly better off using a registered landscaper, and they're protected if they do use a registered landscaper from being fined, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Maliki, and I'll come back to you if you have more questions. Councilor Ryan, followed by Wright. Councilor Ryan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and a couple of my questions were answered. And I'll try and go through my questions as quick as I can. As I said in the previous meetings about this ordinance, I was always just worried about, since we're implementing so strict of a policy, that there was fairness across the board, that the landscapers that were following our policy and being registered and using the right equipment were not standing there watching other landscapers get away with not following the ordinance. And I see that it looks like we're going to be able to do this, because I do get calls from landscapers that said they were saying this one's getting away with it, this one's getting away with it. And so I just wanted to make that point. Was it a plan this first year mostly just to give out warnings the first year? And I have no problem with that. And then going into the next year to write more monetary fines.
But 2021 was more about doing the warnings. 2022 was a combination of those that needed warnings got warnings, and then those that continued to not follow the rules then got the fines. And so that's how we got to $64,000 in fines. So, and you had a number of companies that just repeatedly were either not registered or using non-compliant equipment or doing it out during the summertime, during the ban period. So, we had people doing different things that were not in compliance with the ordinance. And so this year, if you've already been warned, you're going right to a fine. So that's sort of the difference for 2023. We're not going to just keep doing warnings.
Okay, I think that's a good way of doing it. I noticed, I did go through this list, and I noticed that there were a few repeat offenders. And I'm probably, if they're repeat offenders, then they're on the list that aren't paying the fines. Did they find that a lot, the same companies doing that?
We did find that there were quite a few recidivists, and there are certain companies that just told Chuck straight to his face they're not going to register and they don't care. So Chuck just will continue to write them tickets, and Jonah and his team will take them to court.
Well, that's really nice. If they basically thumbing their nose to us, because if they're thumbing their nose to him, they're thumbing their nose to all of us.
Well, there were a couple. Yep.
All right, and just to finish on my round here, I'm really in favor of the digital tickets. connected right to the database. It works for parking tickets, and I think it would work great for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Wright, followed by Lucas. Councilor Wright?
Thank you. Could Mr. Lojack maybe turn off his video so we don't come in and out again?
You don't want him watching you while you ask this question?
Making faces at me. Yeah, I like data too. It would be nice.
I can still see her.
It'd be nice to have this as a spreadsheet. Also, I think a lot of us would have the same similar questions. So if someone could spend like 5 minutes ahead of time and sum it up, like, how many total warnings were there from how many different companies, how many companies have multiple warnings, those type
We'll
of,
do that.
how
Yeah.
many were given fines, how many companies have multiple fines. And
Councilor Wright, let me just say, I think it's a fair request, but I think it's also fair if you send along the questions that you're
Yeah,
looking
so-
for, especially knowing what's in that spreadsheet. It
Okay.
might be fair to send them a list of things, ways you'd like to see it summed up.
okay, yep. And I think a lot of other people would like similar data. So it just, if one
Sure.
person's doing it instead of 10 of us. And from looking at that, what's your big takeaway? What went well, what didn't well, and what will you do differently next year?
Well, I think the things we're doing differently this year, as we mentioned, we're going straight to the fines. We're not doing additional warnings. We are not allowing registration for those who haven't paid. We've upped our game. The law department is pursuing those who haven't paid. We're going to be using an online tool through NewGov for people to report issues.
So residents could report it then through NewGov?
Yes. So Councilor Baker had come up with that concept, and I think Deb, I think we're working on that, right, Deb? Yes, she's shaking her head. So we are working on that tool, which could be helpful to the enforcement officer as he plans out his week
Okay.
and in terms of enforcement.
So my one question on that, most people won't know to do it versus calling, 311. Is there a way to take, calls from 311 and get it into the NewGov system or no?
We can certainly take calls from 311 and add them and get them to the enforcement officer. It's just, we're hoping to have everything done digitally. I think it's probably a cleaner way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
Well, remember that a report to 311 will delay any type of response. And we're not a response group. We're not reactive.
yeah, but I think if you're putting it in the NewGov system, that's,
We're out there. And as it takes that extra time, you'll never catch them.
yeah,
I
but
don't know, it won't make it any quicker.
but are you going to take the data from the NewGov and go chase after them? I thought that was more planning your week. So you're not going to use that real time.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1 second, Councilor Wright. It looked like Ms. Finnemore wanted to possibly add to something here. Did you want?
Thanks, Deb.
I just want to let you know that there is going to be a link on our Newton MA website where in inspectional services that will take you right to a leaf blower complaint form. So they have two options of how to get to it.
Thank you.
One, go through NewGov directly or go through the ISD website where we have the link right to that form. So the public can put information in and Chuck will get real-time notification on his iPad when he's out in the field.
Oh, I hadn't heard that part of it. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why I want to let you know that
All right.
because
No-
of doing it
no
in NewGov,
promises, though. No promises that he'll be able to
Exactly.
quickly get there. Yeah.
but he would get real-time notification once it's entered. So if he's already out in the field and in that area, he could be potentially there shortly after, or we're keeping track of those so that on a weekly basis, he can say, hey, every Monday, this person's at this address. I'm not usually on that side. I can go over there. So it's going to be very helpful if everybody uses the OpenGov complaint form. And I can send you links to everything so you can see them. There's one for registration, one for complaints, and one for tickets. So they'll all integrate together and we can do reports that you want. And just for reference, I know you're going to send it to John, you're going to send it to Jonathan. If you include me, then I can get it started quicker for you guys, so you can get what you want. And I can tailor the record to give more detail of what you're looking for.
Okay.
Just to let everybody know.
Okay, that's great. And it's great that it's real time too, so that he can see it. I just in general, what part of the city had more complaints? Is any one that's more complaints than others, or no? Pretty much spread.
We didn't map it out this year. I think we could, if we got someone else involved that does our GIS, we could possibly map it out for us.
Yeah, we could probably get Doug to do that. Just looking at the lists and hearing about where things were happening, it's everywhere. It is south side, north side, west, east, you name it.
Okay, and the latest data is what, 40% of Newton residents work from home, so I can understand why the numbers are up too. So
That's part of it as well. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Next up is Councilor Lucas. Let me just, before Councilor Lucas goes, ask Mr. Yo, maybe, if we get to the point where there is a complaint link on the ISD page, and perhaps by the summer, it may be worth putting it on the city's front page, you know,
Yeah.
maybe at the beginning, you know, of the summer, something like that, just to get people there
We will.
easier.
We'll put it in the mayor's update, and then we'll also get it to the councilors, so you all have it for your newsletters or for whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Councilor Lucas, I apologize for putting in there.
Perfectly okay. I was looking at the list, and there's a good amount of unknowns. And I think I heard earlier that if it's unknown, there's a very good chance that the enforcement officer got there late. Is that correct?
Those are for the police calls to police dispatch. And by the time police made it to the scene, the landscapers were gone. Landscapers work very quickly these days. And dispatch, you know, the officers are not always able to get there right away. They have other probably higher priority things they need to be doing. So,
Sure.
yeah, so unknown is what was, I think, is what typically was put in there by the officers and the data analyst for that spreadsheet.
Okay. So basically what I'm getting at is, because you said the complaints come from the whole city, excuse me, all parts of the city. And there's one enforcement officer working in inspectional services. Would it be helpful to have two? It's a big city.
Well, you know, we have a combination of police response and this surveillance program by the officer in ISD, and that's you know, that is our program, and I think it's been successful. We think we made progress in 2022. We think we've made a bunch of upgrades for 23. So we're optimistic about making further progress in 23. Could we always use more? Sure, but you know, our resources are limited. So we operate under Prop 2.5 here, and so.
Yeah, well, let's not get into that right now, but
well, that's the reality of the city.
Oh, yeah, that I understand. I meant like never mind.
Is there a way around Prop 2.5? Is there?
Yeah,
there is a way around it. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. But you know, I don't know. It's a big city, and I don't know. Just one enforcement officer going around, you know, the whole city. You know, maybe it would be easier if you had two, but I understand there are budget constraints. I completely get that.
Yeah, if I could just quickly say that I ran an enforcement program for sewer dischargers into Boston Harbor 20 years ago. And it's not necessarily about the number of agents you have. It's about how you operate the program. If there's an element of surprise that these landscapers feel like there's a chance that Chuck is around the corner and watching them, and they know that he's working different days of the week and could be anywhere in the city at any time, it's going to change behavior. And we think has really started to. And the fact that we're serious, our law department is backing us up and is going after the fines. The word is going to spread. We hope that it will really change behavior. And that's what we saw with Boston Harbor as well, as the industries. If they ever thought that there was a chance that our sampling associates were going to show up there unannounced, it starts to work over time. So we'll see.
Okay, all right, well, I just hope you keep an open mind. If, there is money, extra money for potentially some help, I encourage you to.
Yes, and I'd say also, Chuck, John, Andy, the chief zoning code enforcement person, is also helping with the program when he's out. So he's also able to write tickets as well. So if he's out and about, I can tell you, Andy's not going to be shy about issuing a warning or a fine, right, John?
Yeah, we don't claim that Andy's a leaf blower enforcement guy, but he's got a ticket book, and he does the work that Chuck does when he's out there.
Okay, all right, well, all right, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
We hear you. Thank you.
Mr. Yo, Commissioner Lojak, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lucas. Let me go next to Councilor Ryan, who hasn't spoke yet, then I'll come back to you, Councilor Baker, okay?
I did speak already once.
You did, I apologize. Let me first go to Councilor Baker then for round two.
I don't want Council Baker on me.
Yep. No, I appreciate your honesty, Councilor Ryan, and I apologize for my bad memory. What did I just say? Councilor Baker?
Thank you. So first, I think we all ought to applaud the administration for a significant amount of progress here, and that is a really bringing Mr. Andrew aboard has made a significant difference. If you print the list out in a big expanded form, you can see that the tickets are almost entirely written by him. There are occasional warnings by the police, and even the police records, Chief, I think could be helped by, because I know there are several I called in that just showed that's unknown, and I know the identity and the location and things like that. So I think that the coordination, if somehow the information that goes to Mr. Ederhe goes to the police, and the information that goes to the police goes to Mr. Ederhe in real time, not just after the fact. If there's some way to coordinate that, I think it will enhance the ability for both sides to enforce. And that's an administrative side of this game that I'm sure you all can work on. And I also want to applaud the online forum. Cambridge has a version of this, and to have Newton have one, I think, is a signal step forward. And again, a big cheer. There's one dimension of this that I've run into, which others may have, which is and as the commissioner alluded to, there's some people who say, I don't care, I'm just going to pay the fine. And I've run into this where they say, I'll just pass it on to my customers. So I guess the question is, the protection for a homeowner is they're using a registered landscaper. If there is an unregistered landscaper or a landscaper that's suspended, can the homeowner now be fined?
I'll let Jonah answer that question.
Counselor, do you want to repeat that? I didn't necessarily follow it.
There are two things that were coming up. As I heard Mr. Yo say, first, scofflaws would not be allowed to register. So a homeowner right now gets protection from being fined for leaf blower use on the homeowner's property by using a registered landscape.
Correct.
So there's an incentive for the homeowner to get his landscapers or her landscapers to comply because they want to avoid the fine by being unregistered, right? And that's a signal step forward, and I think an important one, that part of the public communication that Mr. Yo has indicated. There's also, though, Councilor Maliki asked Commissioner Lojak if someone accumulates fines and essentially becomes eligible for suspension. The question now is, once suspended, is the homeowner now at risk? Because the landscaper is now operating without really the authorization in the city. And therefore, again, the incentive here is for landscapers to comply and not bother the homeowner if we could possibly do that. But if there's somebody who is saying, I don't care, and I'm just going to pass this on to the homeowner, should the homeowner be immune from any response?
No, I don't have the language in front of me, but I believe the homeowner can be issued a ticket if the operator is unregistered or not in good standing, and not in good standing would mean they're suspended. That's
Okay,
That's what I
that's
believe.
helpful. Okay, thank you. I'll go on to others. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. I see Councilor Leary has raised her hand and having not yet commented on this, let me go to her first. Councilor Leary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to just thank the administration and the police and inspectional services for doing such a great job with enforcing our leaf blower regulations. I just think about all the years that we worked on this, and we had a lot of failures and missteps, and now I think we're really running a more efficient program. I just had a couple of specific questions. Also, if it wasn't a format where you could, Excel, where you could move the data around, it
We'll
would.
send that, yeah.
Yeah,
That
they
would be
agreed to send
really
that to us.
helpful. And I think the registration of landscapers is really an important tool. And it's hard, you can't really tell on this spreadsheet. Could we like put a little asterisk or something next to registered landscapers on the list? So we know,
Deb, what do you think?
Or add a column.
or add a column, yeah, because
Registered, not
they
registered.
really should be registered, and it would be great if Newton residents could look up to see what landscapers are registered to do
Well,
business.
we will have that every single year. We'll have very easily, I found list of the registered landscapers, and we will make sure that you all and the mayor's update puts out that link so people can get to it. But in terms of this list of those that have been warned or fined, I don't know, Deb, if it's easy enough to register. It's really about those who are unregistered, probably is most easily.
I can add a column to the spreadsheet
Okay.
and redo it and tell you which ones are registered from 2022.
Oh,
And then.
Yeah,
the
it would be
new one.
2022, so it's gonna, at this point, old news, but I think we can add that in.
So just to be clear, legally, are the landscapers still allowed to do business in the city of Newton if they're not registered?
Well, they can
If they're-
do
If they're
landscaping
not using leaf
business.
blowers,
Yeah, they just can't use a leaf blower.
Okay, and then when they are registered, it's my understanding that there is a sticker that they put on their truck to
Yeah,
show that
this
they are
year,
registered.
it is what color is that? Sort of is it lime green?
Yellow.
yellow.
It's a yellow, sorry. It's like a bright yellow.
Or
Okay.
lemon green.
How many, and then my final question is how many landscapers are currently registered with the city?
I had last count was 111 for 2022. And we haven't opened yet for 23. Next Thursday, I will open the registration up for 23.
Okay, we have a lot of different landscapers doing business in the city.
Yes.
We do,
Yes,
and
it is.
it's interesting, they're from a lot are from Waltham, Newton, Watertown, but there are landscapers who are coming here from a long distance.
Yeah, I have seen a few ones that I didn't recognize.
495 and towards New Hampshire, and yeah.
Okay, I think that's all my questions. There was something that I was just going to ask, but I just lost my train of thought there. But anyway, I think it's great work, and I'm really appreciative of the effort that has gone into this and improving the quality of life for Newton residents. So thank you.
Thanks, Councilor
Can I
Leary.
ask
Ms. Finnemore?
one-
Yep.
I'm sorry, just one question. How many people want this updated spreadsheet? I don't want to send it to all the council unless all the council wants it.
I think it's worth sending it to the whole council.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
send it through the clerk's office and Jacqueline, where are you? You can distribute it to the committees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Danberg. Counselor Ryan, I want to apologize. These people
Yeah,
keep
okay.
jumping in. They're jumping in ahead of you. I think
know.
it's rude, but they're going to do what they're going to do. What can I do? The rules are
And
the rules.
I was the nice one, but
I know,
that's all
I
right.
know. Counselor Danberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply wanted to say that I wanted a copy, not that I wanted to speak. So I'll see.
Fair enough. Thank you. Counselor Ryan.
About time. I have two questions left. One I forgot to ask before. So I've observed this, contractors that are contracted, landscapers that are contracted by the city that are using the wrong equipment and of course, hours of operation and days of operation. In other words, working on holidays, working before 7 and after 7 on weekdays. Is there any way we can do anything about that? Are any of these landscapers hired by the city being fined?
It's a
Going
good
to-
question. We are going to Parks and Rec, who, does most of the hiring of all the landscapers for the city. It's actually a small group of companies. It's a good question. We're going to want to make sure we double, triple remind them that no matter where they're doing business, they should be following the rules. Certainly, if they're going to be in big trouble and if they're doing it on city property, which I think we have ingrained in them that is absolutely not allowed. But if they're then doing it on a private property somewhere, I think we'll remind them that is not something we want to have them be caught doing. So
Yeah, I'm
thank you.
talking about.
It's a good point.
Yeah, no, I am talking about the ones we hire, contract, working on city property, like, Park in Newtonville on corner of Walnut and Watertown, Sawmill Brook Parkway, and there I've observed, and then also some of the regular landscapers want to point out to me that this is happening and
Okay,
it's a
well,
tough-
let us know.
Tough comeback on that, All right, so the other thing is on the consequences. Councilor Baker talked about getting the actual homeowner involved. That's why I think that list is so important that, if you see a list and that these are registered landscapers, then shame on you for not picking one of them. But the other thing is, these landscapers that say, hey, I'm just not going to get a sticker and I'm not going to comply and all this. What's the actual final consequences that can happen here? I mean, can they be arrested or, you can say you can't do business here, but they go around the corner and, someplace else. I'm just once again looking for fairness.
Jonah
across the
and
board.
Chief Carmichael, I'll turn this over to the two of you.
Yeah, I can take this first. I mean, at the end of the day, once we file a criminal complaint in district court, they will be arraigned and there will ultimately be a criminal trial. And assuming we can prove the offenses, which I'm sure we will, they didn't appeal them, and Chuck's very good at going into court and establishing the violations, then they will either have to pay or go to jail. And I'm
Okay,
confident that we'll reach that stage if we need to.
Good, and I'm happy to hear that. And once again, all I'm saying, it's all about fairness for the ones that are complying. There has to be some kind of consequence for the ones that continue to not comply. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. Next, I have Councilor Malky, and while she's unmuting, can I just ask Commissioner Lojek, we've talked a number of times in the past. I know conversations with you and this committee led to a number of changes in the ordinance, but am I correct that you actually are not seeking any changes in the ordinance at this time and think that things are working well? Is that accurate?
Well, we think that based on the performance in '22, There were changes made that we were behind, like, no new warning and that kind of thing. We're not looking for any changes. I think this year will show even more progress than the previous year.
Thank you. Councillor Malachy, followed by Baker. Councillor Malachy?
Thanks. Just following up on what I was asking before. So an individual police officer is not going to encounter as many of these incidents as Mr. Adrahi. If are police officers still issuing warnings? Because I'm just wondering if if a landscaper had multiple actual violations cited before, and then what would be a third, strike, as it were, by a police officer who might not know that they have previous violations and they decide to issue a warning, is that still going to go back to ISD to see it that it's number 3, or is that just going to get lost? You see what I'm saying?
Let me get that, Jonathan.
Yeah, I mean, you could start it but I think that the data will eventually get shared with ISD. So we could catch up with somebody.
So it would count as,
we will share the data.
it would count as a third strike, even though the police officer had only issued a warning because they thought it was the guy's first time or something.
So
Yeah, so Chief,
what's the question?
if your officer identified and you essentially caught somebody operating outside of the ordinance, leaf blowing, and that information, they were warned because they didn't know how many strikes they had against them.
Or they say, I've heard of the ordinance or something.
Yeah, or they had some excuse, yeah. And that information is shared every week with ISD. And then, John and Deb, I assume or Jonah, at that point, as long as we have a report from the police that there was a violation again, maybe we could, you get to that third strike.
That's right. It goes on the list. And then also with the items that are being presented at court for people like unpaid, those particular individuals or those particular companies, we will be concentrating on them specifically to make sure that we're preventing them from doing further business.
Okay, and does the violation need to be witnessed by either ISD or the police officer to count?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
if people get video or pictures, that doesn't count because
No.
no one can legally confirm it was
No.
taken when they say it was taken.
No.
Okay,
Someone who's authorized to write the ticket has to witness the.
okay. And
we really, I just want to remind people that we really don't advise, I'm speaking here, this is probably the chief's words here, really don't advise people to confront landscapers. I mean, if you want to take down the name of the company and use our tool on ISD's website to mail it in, but I would not try to confront people. We don't need police coming there for other reasons.
okay, and does Mr. Adrahi drive around in a nondescript, non-city vehicle so he's not easily spotted?
He uses a city vehicle.
He does. Okay. Does he have any sense that landscapers are letting each other know, hey, he's in this area and not in your area, or vice, whatever?
Well, he knows well that they do communicate with each other. However, it hasn't been his experience that people are calling up other landscapers and here he comes. They're not.
Oh, okay.
Just remember, this guy knows.
They're not that friendly.
This guy knows.
So,
the
I mean, I
city.
think it's.
Yeah, he knows the city very well. And so he's able to clearly, based on the number of fines he's issued, he's really able to sneak up and catch people.
Okay, and last question, I think. So I noticed on the chart, there don't seem to be any fines or
regular business day that Chuck works, after business hours, weekends and holidays, it's the police that would have to do the enforcement. So that is what it is.
but do we think there are no violations occurring after hours? There isn't a kind of a regular of what hours he's going to be working. That's somewhat unpredictable.
That's right.
Okay. And the police could be responding to calls anytime.
Correct.
Yes.
All right. And if a violation is occurring sort of what's obviously after hours, like 5 in the morning or, 7 at night or whatever, what is the resident's best option to report it?
Call the police.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
like with any noise violation or work hour violation. Weekends, holidays, and at night, it's always the police.
Yeah, and if there's a pattern, if your neighbor or one of your neighbors down the street is every, their contractor's coming at 6 a.m. every second Tuesday, let us know, because, if that's the case, then we can make arrangements.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Counselor Downs.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to just add my voice to my colleagues that are pleased and thankful at all of the good work done by the police and ISD and the administration to start to wrap our arms around this particular issue and start to see some progress on it. I'm heartened. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Downs. Counselor Baker, you may get the last word here.
Okay, two things. There's a provision in the ordinance that requires landscapers to have their name and identifying information on their trucks. And again, this is one of those things that I think is important that people understand needs to be enforced so we can make sure everybody's in the game. And so the information is available when you find somebody. That's one of the things that's a reportable offense, as I understand it. Mr. Temple can confirm that. The second thing is just, as we think about this, if you call the police, they ask for identifying information from you and what's your name, what's your phone number, and the landscaping company and then the location. But all of that is confidential. It's not showing up here. The same is going to be true of the 311 information. Isn't that correct? Because it's just like any zoning enforcement, right? It's just you're providing information which is available to the enforcement agent who can then take advantage of it if necessary. Is that appropriate description, Mr. Yo?
I believe so. John, yeah.
All complaints received by us are held in strict confidence. And I
Right,
often
so-
say to people, it would take a court order to reveal the name.
But if someone puts forth a picture or a name on the 311 that says, I've seen this violation, and then Mr. Edry uses it, that's not necessarily going to show up to the detriment of that reporting individual. That's what I'm trying to make sure. Right? That's
Yeah, the
okay.
311 will be treated the same way as any zoning enforcement request.
Okay.
in terms of
So,
information.
but if you were to summarize, Mr. Yo, the advice for individual citizens who, first, homeowners need to make sure they use registered landscapers and that they are landscapers if possible, that they know are compliant. But the individual citizen who's concerned should report through 311 to the police if there's off hours. And the hope is that Mr. Edry will be able to take advantage of that data in a way to respond to a systematic way to the kind of violations. Is that a fair summary?
That's a fair statement. I mean, a good example is if we think a firm is starting to get into compliance and then we hear from somebody that they're not. I mean, it's going to be all of this information could be helpful to us. So,
Okay. But I think when the mayor puts out the note, it should sort of just say, here's what you should do as citizens, here's what you should not do. Obviously, don't confront somebody, just report the information, and then hopefully by the time the process works its way through, because the goal here is compliance. It's not just to raise money through fines and make life
Absolutely.
difficult.
This is not about raising money. It's about compliance. And we hope that there'll be a period where we're raising money and then a period where we're not raising as much and that it starts to go down at some point. I don't know exactly where we are in the curve, but hopefully we'll start heading down.
Again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Big. Yeah, you might say that the $64,000 question is, how do we get compliance? I just want to add my voice to the chorus. I think that spreadsheet really drove home sort of how widespread both the problem was and how well the enforcement is going. So, you know, kudos to everyone in the city who is working on this. I think hiring the person really served us well. I think the evidence demonstrates that. So thank you all for helping to enforce this. I think we've worked on it. We can continue to work on it and get it to a place where it is both enforceable and enforced and doing what it is supposed to do. So
yeah, and just on behalf of John, I will thank Deb Finnemore on our team for and Andy and certainly Chuck. It's been a team effort, and we are making progress, and they're at the center of it. So
thank you. Chief Carmichael, by the way, please send your best, our best to the officers. I think we all hope that they're doing well and have a speedy recovery. Want to get that in case you're leaving us. In programs and services, 10822, do I have a motion to hold?
So moved.
Councilor Baker has moved hold in programs and services. All in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Councilor Downs?
I will do the same for public safety and transportation. Do I have a motion to hold?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilor Lipoff. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right. My committee, we are moving to a different Zoom link or next door.
Good to see you all. Thank you.
Good to see you all. Yeah.
Madam Chair, Andrea,
Yes.
I'm going to be hanging back at PNS. I have an item following this one, kind of mine, but I'll be back to PS&T shortly.
I think we have a quorum anyway. See you short.
Great. Thank you.
All right, back in programs and services. The next item on our agenda is item 567-22. This is a discussion item and possible ordinance amendment regarding processes that could prevent abandoned or condemned properties. I think Councilor Oliver, as well as Councilors Wright and Laredo, championed this item, but I want to just turn it over to Councilor Oliver to maybe articulate what sort of led to the filing of this item. And then I think we can hear some from some folks in the city. Councilor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Chair Krinsman. And I want to start by saying thank you to everyone from the city who joined us tonight. I know that this was kind of a large request from, a large number of people were requested to kind of join this item to kind of help us figure this out. But really what triggered this was a little ways back, we heard an item in finance that had to do with a property on Newtonville Ave, a particular home that had gotten into a state of disrepair such that the neighbors were complaining that they were worried about the house, that it was going to collapse. And then as the item kind of, as we began to explore what was really going on, it also became apparent that there was a significant, somewhere just north of $600,000 of outstanding property taxes owed, in addition to the fact that the property was literally in a state of collapse. And really that prompted several of us to start to ask questions about how we got there, how that particular property managed to get to that level of not only disrepair, but debt. And what I'm hoping to achieve, at least through this item, is surfacing not only kind of how that property got to that point, but how we can help residents from getting to that point in the future, as well as protecting the city from the type of, that particular property on Newtonville Ave, I should mention, currently, we have spent roughly, $1.1 million to, in combination of the outstanding debt and the kind of, the tearing down of the property for various reasons. And what I'd like to kind of explore here, or begin to explore, is just that. How do we prevent situations like this from happening to residents? How are the various departments within the city made aware of situations like this? And how can we really kind of balance out helping residents and protecting the city at the same time? There was a report issued, I believe just last week, that in finance, where we were presented with a list of properties with relatively high outstanding property tax payments. And I was kind of surprised to learn that one of those properties is actually on my street, and it's over $400,000. And it just seems to me that at some point, we need to kind of, as a city, embrace what's going on here and discuss the possibility of plans. So that's really what brought us to this point. I don't know if other folks who are on the item wanted to kind of comment before we kind of open this up, if that's fair.
Looks like Council Laredo has his hand up. Council Laredo, I know you're on the item. You want to?
I am, and thank you, Councilor Oliver, for docketing this item. I think we had an excellent presentation when I attended the finance meeting from Mr. Mendez, who explained how the lien or tax title lien process works with folks who have taxes that are real estate property taxes that are over a couple of years old. They were all on the list. I think there's 50, 60, 70 in the entire city, which is actually pretty good in a city of our size. Number of them were relatively small, and they earned 14% interest. So, from a tax perspective for us, that doesn't cause me any or much concern. We will get our money most likely, and we'll get it with 14% interest, which is pretty darn good. And the only people who come ahead of us, and Mr. Mendez can correct me if I miss something, are the federal or state government for income and other taxes that are owed. And it is unlikely that someone who's got a property, even worth, $750,000 and a $20,000 tax obligation is not likely to have a $600,000 or $700,000 federal tax liability. Unlikely in any event. But what I want to build on what Councilor Oliver said is, it seems to me when anybody hits this list, that should trigger some internal reviews in the city for a couple of things. One, to make sure that in fact they don't have some huge tax obligation out there that would put our money at risk. But also, if somebody has not been paying taxes for 3, 4, or 5 years, that's probably indicative of other issues. You may have you may have an elderly person who's suffering from mental health issues or other financial issues. You may have things where we as a city might want to at least try to intervene and make sure that we don't have a problem situation. And of course, someone who's letting their house go that badly to the tune of running up hundreds of thousands of dollars is now posing a detriment and a problem to their neighbors, whether it's rodents or hoarding or other behaviors. So I'm just wondering, and again, I'd like to hear from Ms. Walsh and Mr. Lojak and Mr. Mendez about some ideas about how you might coordinate this, at least to do some intervention that's both going to help protect the city financially, but perhaps even more importantly, look out for residents who clearly may be very vulnerable and see what we can do to intervene. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Rado. And let me say, I believe that the folks from the city who are here to discuss this, I believe we have Commissioners Lojak and Walsh. I believe Jonah Temple is available to talk about this as well as Ms. Wilson from the Law Department and Mr. Mendes from the Treasurer Collector. So if any of you all want to take the lead on this or tell us anything, go right ahead. I'll turn it over to sort of anyone from the city who wants to, present on this, talk about the process. See. Or not, that if you want to
Chair,
just take
can
a question, we can
Chair.
just ask our questions, that's fine.
Chair, point of privilege. Can I just make a follow comment to what Councilor Laredo said?
Sure. As
Thank
the
you.
vice chair, I'll afford you that privilege.
Thank you. So, Councilor Laredo, I really appreciate the compassion by which you talked about the tax list. I am having a little bit of deja vu because we talked about this last Monday. And, subsequently, we've learned that list wasn't entirely up to date. And I do think, I appreciate the compassion in your voice because as we know, some of that conversation wasn't so compassionate last Monday to people's circumstances. And as a result, there's been, some exploitation and misinformation that's come out of that meeting. So I appreciate the tenor and tone in which you're approaching this tonight.
May I just respond to my colleague? I don't understand your statement at all, Councilor Noel. The question in finance was a finance question, a legitimate question, a fair question. Are we getting money or not? And I think we get excellent explanations from Mr. Mendez as we're not getting money, but the city is relatively protected. I still think that if we have people in serious arrears, that should be a concern for the city, and we ought to be at least examining whether we should take action or not. We might not take action depending on the individual, the particular circumstances. But there's very different between a vulnerable resident who may be elderly and someone who just is taking advantage of a situation and not paying city taxes. But my point tonight is that I do think that this is at least indicative of folks who may be having issues that go beyond the financial. And I would hope as a city, we'd use this as a warning sign to not only try to do the financially prudent thing, but also to look out for our residents' well-being. Thank you.
Okay, let me start taking questions from councilors and we'll see, or comments. Again, I've sort of listed off who I believe is here from the city to help answer questions as well. So first I have Councilor Baker, followed by Ryan. Councilor Baker.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I there?
We can hear you.
Can you hear me? Okay.
We couldn't before you stopped talking. Now we can. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to have to go pick up Sally in a minute, but I'll just say that we have an ordinance to deal with dilapidated buildings that we passed a number of years back. That is part of, I think, a coordinated response, and perhaps the city officials can talk about the use of that. We did invoke that in a couple of places where properties were dilapidated. There were animals, getting in and causing a nuisance to the neighborhood, and so that's an additional tool we already have. That's different from the tax delinquency, but I just want to mention that's a resource that we do have. And apologies, I'll come back. I may not be able to come back. I may have to leave, but anyway, thanks.
Fair enough. Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor Ryan, followed by Oliver. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have a question for anybody that can answer it. And I dealt with the law department almost 4 years ago when I first came on the council for a group of neighbors on the street a vacant lot. And basically I was told there was nothing I could do about it. And let me just say quickly, I'm not gonna go into the whole background. I looked for the folder I had on it today and didn't come up with it, but I'm willing to dig all the information up again. So it was an unbuildable lot that was beside a brook. This is over near Newton South. It's unbuildable. It wasn't large enough to build on. It was somewhat a wetland that the owner of the property had moved to, and now it's almost 30 years, moved to California, but now has been dead for 10. Was not paying any taxes on it. And I just was never given well, maybe the answer they were giving me, I didn't understand, but it basically came down to there was nothing I could do about it or the neighbors. And I still didn't understand why. Now, the person I dealt with in law is no longer there. But I'd really like to take another run at this because the neighbors still 4 years later, and I guess they dealt with my predecessor. So this has been going on for years. But why, if someone is not even alive anymore, is not paying taxes on this piece of property, plus it's a danger, plus kids drinking there. A tree last year fell down on the fence to one of the abutters from this lot. And to the point that the city told me that they couldn't, DPW told me that they couldn't even legally go in there and clean up the dead trees and basically the dangerous situation in there that could happen. The most I could get done was the sidewalk was covered from growth coming out of that lot. The most I could get done was DPW to clean the lot. But basically they said they can't even go into it. So maybe some of the lawyers on today from the law department can give me some answers. Even to the point it had to go through the state and everything else, but this was a resident that owned this property at one time that's long been deceased and has been neglected for now over 30 years. And I will get the lot number, the information, everything else, if we want to tackle this again. But, you know, there's some neighbors that think we just can't do anything, so.
Counselor, is there a structure on that property?
No.
Okay.
No, no, there isn't. There has never been.
Well, if we're just talking about a parcel of vacant land, then the city's only recourse would be to foreclose on the property for unpaid taxes.
They told me they couldn't even do that.
Well, I mean, that's certainly a conversation we can have offline, and it's probably a little bit beyond the scope of this item, but I don't see why we couldn't
Yeah, the only
foreclose on
reason
that
I'm bringing
property.
it up is because I was so frustrated and felt I kept hitting dead ends. And I've been dealing with this since I came on the council. That maybe, and I don't want to take up everybody's time, but I will contact you, Mr. Temple, and I'll get all the information on the lot and all that. And I'm sure there's some record in the law department on this too. So I will get in touch with you offline on this. Thanks. Thank you.
Councilor Oliver?
Great, thank you, Chair. So I guess maybe I'll just start with some more kind of specific questions or thoughts or prompt some responses. I am curious, like at one point, and I believe it was this past summer, there was a short list of homes that had been in Newton that had been damaged by fire or similar, disasters. I believe that there was one property that had had some sort of a foundation problem and a part of it had cracked and partially collapsed. And I'm curious from either a inspectional services perspective or Health and Human Services with regards to the neighbors, or even from police or fire, are there situations out there that, throw up a flag that hits any of your collective departments that, similar to what Councilor Ryan is pointing out, where there are hazards involved with the state of a property? And I'm only kind of taking a guess or some examples of how those properties may have gotten to the state they're in. But I'm curious, like, do these situations hit your radars fairly frequently, or and like, what can be done about these things? Like, what are the options?
Well,
Go ahead, Commissioner Ledger.
I can speak to that first. We have an ordinance about abandoned and neglected properties, and we do chase them all the time. I think a lot more than any of you would be aware. The fact is that many of these properties, we're working with Ron Mendez now, and he's giving us a list of properties that are behind in taxes, and we send a code enforcement officer out to inspect those properties to see what kind of condition they're in, so that we can get ahead of that very problem. So we do that now. And the good news is that in about a week, we're going to convene a group called the Joint Code Enforcement Task Force. Now, the Joint Code Enforcement Task Force involves ISD, it involves health, it involves engineering, it involves planning, it involves a number of different departments, the fire and the police, to deal with code problems, which heretofore have been hard to deal with because who do they go to? This way, these problems are brought to a group, and then we figure out who has responsibility and what can they do, and that kind of gets worked out. Andy Mavrelis from my office, the code enforcement officer, will chair that group along with someone from Linda Walsh's office. And I think it's a very good approach. We did it years ago. That through a lot of reasons that this task force fell apart. But we're pulling it back together. Laura's involved as well. And we're going to be able to get at problems, because if there's a problem for ISD, there's probably a problem for health. There's probably a problem for other departments, the fire department, for example. And it makes it far easier. And now we have Ron Mendez as well. It makes it far easier to deal with a problem when there are multiple departments involved. And I'll note a quick story. Then I was doing this in Brookline years and years ago now, 20 years ago. And because I showed up in court by myself as the code enforcement guy, the court didn't pay a whole lot of attention. It's just the code enforcement guy. Well, when I started this task force, we had health, and we had law, and we had fire, and we had police, and we all showed up in court. Well, guess what? First call, first case, because the judge recognized the importance of the issue. So this group will be getting together next week for the first time, organizational meeting, and I think we're going to see a great effect from it.
I can speak to the concern about helping any residents that Councilor Laredo and Councilor Oliver and Councilor Noel spoke about. If these houses come to our attention and there are people living there, we absolutely attempt to help them. We reach out to them. We sometimes reach out to family members and try to offer services. And sometimes we are successful. Yes, John and I actually had this task force going together with our social services department and worked on hoarding. That was something that we did. John and I did together with the task force and tried to make some headway and connect people to resources when there are folks living in homes. We also have a role to play, and I agree with Commissioner Lojack, we are stronger together. So we have a role to play when there's a house that's unfit for human habitation, when there's a house that is loaded with rodents or raccoons in the attic. We write order letters, John writes correction letters, we write unfit for human habitation letters, but we really have to work with our law department. These abandoned properties, sometimes we're writing letters out of state to a different country, to someone who is deceased, trying to find their relatives. So we work really closely with our law department. And those are the couple of comments that I would make, just to add to this conversation.
Thank you, Commissioner Walsh. Next, I have Counselor Wright.
Thank you, Chair Grinsman. And Mr. Lojak, I'm glad to hear about the Joint Code Enforcement Task Force. I got a few questions. I know you haven't met yet, but you're going to start next week. How often do you think you're going to be meeting?
Well, we're going to meet monthly or as needed.
Okay. So a lot of us counselors do know properties that I think should get onto this list. So I was wondering, is there someone that we could send to you or to someone to put it on this list to check out for, we think it's abandoned or should be condemned or whatever? And it would be very helpful then, once we send that information, if there's a spreadsheet, the status of where things are. And I know, like in Ward 3, we worked with you, and I know things take years, so it's not like a quick turnaround, but at least we know something's going on and, a spreadsheet where it is in the process. Would that be available?
Well, I think there's one of two ways for you to deal with that. One is you can send in a request for code enforcement if you think that the building is in violation, and you send that, through our website, through NewGov, to Andy Mavrelis, the code enforcement officer. Or you can call Andy and talk to him about it, and he can vet it for you, meaning, is it already on our radar? Is it already on the list? You can do it that way as well. And he's generally available.
Okay, but having like a spreadsheet of, where the status is.
We have a spreadsheet.
Okay, is that something?
Well, we can work on getting that to a point where we can publish it. But, one of the things you have to be careful of is you don't want to be embarrassing people, and so we have to be cautious of that. Now, if that's an internal list, we could then share it with you, but not for publication.
Yeah.
That sort of thing. But
yeah, we get things from law.
I wouldn't want that list out in the public. That's
yeah.
That's a enforcement list. Right.
I think it would be
Just a word of caution.
I'm sorry, you keep breaking up, and I thought you were done. Sorry to be over talking.
Well, I'm sorry.
So, we get memos from the law department that are confidential that we can't share with other people. So this is something I think a lot of us would appreciate to know, status and where it is, and it's on the list and things like that. So that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Wright. Councilor Loreno.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to hear about this. I think this is exactly the right approach. I think this is what Councilor Oliver was driving at when he initiated this docket item. And it's great. You're going to do what we want to do. You're going to be fiscally prudent. You're going to try to make sure we protect the neighbors and the neighborhoods, and you're going to try to help people if they're struggling. We can't ask for any more than that. And that's exactly what city government ought to be doing. Two things, and I'll leave it. One, in regard to Councilor Wright's request, I think Commissioner Lojek is 100% correct. We need to be extraordinarily careful that we preserve privacy issues when it comes especially to somebody's individual emotional state, for example, or personal difficulties. I'd leave it to Mr. Temple or someone else from the legal department to figure out when and how to structure any communications on that. I would suggest respectfully, they're probably better done in an oral fashion than starting to pass out information to councilors in written form. That's just my suggestion. And second, when the time's right, this is not my committee, I'd urge that we put this matter, we hold this item and come back to it, say in 6 or 8 months, certainly this term, but probably near the fall, to see how your meetings have been going, what progress you've made, what can be, what's going well, what might be done differently, and leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Laredo. Councilor Oliver.
I promise this will be the last time you'll hear from me on this item tonight. I'm first off incredibly excited to hear that the JCETF is back in action. Joint Code Enforcement Task Force, that's fantastic. That is, as Councilor Laredo mentioned, like that is exactly, or at least it sounds like that is exactly what at least I was hoping for. Here is some way that we can, as a city, really all the departments, right? You're all stronger together. Couldn't agree more. How can we, look at these challenges holistically so that we're not only resolving them to the benefit of the property owner, but their neighbors? Because there are certainly properties that, as you all know better than I, that you're chasing down and working on, and abandoned properties and damaged buildings and, buildings in foreclosure. There are so many paths that I would assume some of these properties could take to get to a point of, oh, wow, we have a problem here. Look what's going on next door. But I am very curious, like, I'll work directly with legal to find the ordinance that Councilor Baker mentioned about the dilapidated properties. I'm kind of curious to just see what that entails. That would be very interesting to me. And I guess, with that said, I appreciate everybody's time tonight. I think this is a great start. I would second the notion as a non-committee member to hold this, and we'll come back and, sometime in the fall and just check in and see how the JCETF is progressing. And I guess the last question I'll end on is, does that committee, does that task force have goals in mind? Like what outcomes you're trying to achieve?
Well, I would tell you the main goal behind this is to get people familiar with each other internally to the city that deal with enforcement issues. I think much of the council is probably unaware of how many problems we resolve with other departments that never see the light of day, with Linda and with Ron and others. Ron has been a tremendous resource for us because we know that one of the first signs of a problem with a property is the fact that they're not paying their taxes anymore. And that's a flag, and Ron has already given us a list, and Andy has already started pursuing those properties to see what the situation is there. Recently, we found somebody who's been living in their house for 3 years with no water. And that's disastrous. I mean, it's a serious code violation. But the problem is she tells our code enforcement officer that she can't afford the new water line into her house. So, I mean, now we're trying to get her resources. We'll refer people to Linda because she has counselors. We've referred people to the senior center because they have people that can talk to, some of the elderly that are having issues. And there are programs. Doug, what the heck's his name? Doug Damaris was up to see me today, who does the renovation program for the planning department. And he says, we can help all these people. And I said, great, Doug, I'm going to start referring them to you. We used to do this before, and I'm going to do it again. He says, we can give this woman a new water line, and she doesn't have to pay it until she sells the house. And it's a no interest sort of thing. So, these are the kind of things that this task force, I think Doug will be invited. That's why planning will be invited. We want to solve problems, not just react. So we can get out there and solve problems.
That everything you just said is so great to hear. I really appreciate you adding that to the conversation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Council.
That's kind of an alarming story, Commissioner Wojcik. And that 3-year period that coincided with COVID? The woman without water?
No, I just can't. She just says she can't afford it.
Okay.
And that's distressing to hear.
Terrible.
You said, God, why you just, But a lot of people, they're proud, they can't approach somebody about this and just trying to make her way. And, you know, that's very heartrending to hear those kind of stories. And hopefully we can do something about it with other departments. And this will be one of the first properties we discuss.
Okay, thank you all. I see no other hands. So is there a motion to hold 56722?
I move to hold.
Council Ryan has moved hold. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 8-0, we will hold. Thank you. And for those of you who are joining for that item, again, we aren't offended if you log off. We have one remaining item, which is item 59-23. This is requesting a discussion regarding Newton's Economic Stability Mobility Initiative. I think a number of us read about this program when the mayor put out news regarding this program and that ARPA funds were going to be used towards this. To discuss this item, I believe that Director Heath, Amanda Berman, Commissioner Walsh, and Megan Kennedy, I believe they're all here to discuss that item. So thank you all for coming. Councilor Laredo, was there anything you wanted to say before we get an update from?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief and hopefully focus our discussion. First of all, thank you all very much for the memo. This was information that I'd asked for initially when the mayor announced this program, and it's very helpful to have it in written form with explanations of explanations and responses to the various questions. Obviously, with anything to do with ARPA funds, by definition, is different than what we ordinarily do because we didn't get any say over it one way or the other. And not only did we get a say, but we as a council don't get even any involvement or any committee meetings or any discussion until the money's allocated. And that's fine, that's what the law allowed, but it then creates a situation for us as representatives of the residents where the city is spending a couple $2 million on something that we know really almost nothing about, and we haven't had an opportunity to vet. So what I hope we get some answers to this evening are, one, where we're getting the folks or how we're selecting the folks for this program, what additional hiring is going to have to be done by the provider to service these people, and where are those folks coming from. And I think since the money's allocated already, most significantly from our perspective as a council, when the 2 years of the program are up, what are the expectations? Are we going to be asked to fund this going forward in perpetuity? And that may be great. I'm not suggesting it wouldn't be, but now you're placing an additional burden on the city coffers to the tune of maybe another $2 million in 2 years. So we need to have a far better understanding of that. And I also finally want to understand exactly what measurements of success are going to be and how that's going to be reported to us. So within that framework, if you could provide us with more information, with the understanding that you gave us a lot of stuff already in writing. And at least for me, I think we all try to read our materials, so no need to repeat what you put there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Laredo. Did someone from the sort of list of experts that I mentioned want to take the lead on this? I wasn't aware who. Okay, Ms. Walsh. Commissioner Walsh.
Hi, good evening. Barney Heath could not join us this evening. There's myself and Megan Kennedy from my department and Amanda Berman. We also have folks from Empath here tonight. So as I see Councilor Laredo's questions, we have folks from Empath that can answer some of those specifics. So you've got everybody here that should be able to answer your questions, even though it is at just the beginning of this endeavor. So to introduce everybody, I'll start that, and then Amanda is just going to give a few introductory comments. Let's see, I see Ashley, if you want to unmute and just introduce yourself.
Hello, Hi, yes, my name's Ashley Winning and I work at Empath. I'm the Vice President of Research and Evaluation there. And it's nice to be here and be able to join your meeting.
Thank you, Ashley. Michelle?
Hi, Michelle Blundell with Empath. I'm the Senior Director of Communications and similarly happy to be here.
Do we have a third person, Ashley and Michelle?
No, unfortunately, when the date was changed, our other colleague wasn't able to join. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time out of your evening. And I will turn it over to Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you all for taking the time to read our responses to your questions. I won't go through them in too much detail, but I did want to just remind folks that this program really came from a couple different places. I see Josephine McNeil is on the call. Josephine and other members of the Housing Partnership really started to bring the idea of a economic self-sufficiency program to our attention at about a year and a half plus ago, probably even 2 years ago, expressing a strong interest in seeing the city spend money on helping extremely low income households in Newton really work towards self-sufficiency, economic stability. With the ARPA funds that came to the city, as you all know, we commissioned a community needs assessment that was started when former Commissioner Youngblood was in the position, and then Commissioner Walsh picked it up and carried it through with Megan Kennedy and her team and others in the city, where we really looked deeply at what the needs were of our most vulnerable residents through COVID and what they saw as their needs going forward. The community needs assessment recommended a handful of different short and longer term actions. One of those was the idea of economic stability mobility programs coupled with kind of more immediate financial assistance. Residents did express a desire to have support that would help them kind of get to the next step in their economic mobility. So about a year ago, the mayor brought us together as a group, Commissioner Walsh and Megan, Barney and I, to start working on this. We pretty quickly brought on Christina Citino from UMass Donahue Institute, who is really an expert in human service programming from both a research and kind of program initiative perspective. So Christina helped to guide us through this process. And one of the first things we did, the mayor convened an advisory committee of stakeholders and residents who have both lived experience and expertise in the idea of economic mobility, stability. And Christina led us through a process of about 5 months working to put together what the goals and outcomes of this program could and should be, and then also the drafting of the actual request for proposals that went out last fall. We had 3 respondents to the request for proposals. Empath obviously was one of the organizations that submitted a proposal, Jewish Vocational Services and You Aspire. And the advisory committee also acted as the evaluation committee for the RFP. And we went through not only a rigorous evaluation process, but also held interviews with both Empath and Jewish Vocational Services. And it was around the end of the calendar year that the committee put forth their report in terms of that evaluation of the proposals. And the mayor made her decision to move forward with offering the contract to Empath. I won't go into too many details about the empath proposal. I'm sure many of you have read it at this point, and I think there was a lot of detail provided in the mayor's newsletters, as well as our memo that we sent to you all in the Friday packet. But as Commissioner Walsh did just say, we are at the beginning of this. So we haven't really even kicked off in full our work with Empath, and I'll let Ashley speak a bit more about that in terms of how they're going to be recruiting and selecting the 50 families for this program, and the hiring that will take place within Empath to carry out this program. But I did want to touch upon the question of expectations for funding for the program after the 2 years. There are no expectations at this time. This is a ARPA funded program for a matter of 2 years. And when that money is done, this particular program will be done. In terms of the measurements and specific outcomes for success, they have not been developed yet. We are contracting for a phase 2 with UMass Donahue to work with Ms. Zatino again, where she will work directly with Empath as well as us at the city to put that monitoring and evaluation plan in place. It's something that she does quite often and that UMass does as well. And I think Ashley can speak much more clearly and in a detailed manner about this, being that research and evaluation is her day job. But there will be a strong monitoring and evaluation plan put in place. And what is also yet to be determined is what those reports will look like. So when we have more information, we can share that with you all, but that just has not been developed quite yet. So Ashley, why don't I let you jump in and speak a bit to the other questions that I have not answered, and if there's anything else you wanted to add about the program and the proposal.
Sure. Yes, and I'll start with one that you did answer, but just to add a little bit to the evaluation piece, we're thrilled to be able to be in this partnership with the UMass Donahue Institute to form, and we have yet to meet, but to really map out this evaluation. But just wanted to add that at Empath, with all of our programs, we do internal monitoring and evaluation, and which includes, seeing where people are at the beginning, where they end up, but also monthly, where we basically are following people all the time. And that we would continue to do our own work. It's really important to us to continue to learn and continue to evolve programs. And so it's something we bring strongly as well. And then this partnership will just be even stronger. So I'm really excited for that collaboration. And then in terms of, so one of your questions was around the hiring piece. Yes, we are. This is a new project for us. So we are hiring now, and we'll need a project director and mentors to do the work. I'm happy to say more about the program if anyone would like more details. Yeah, was that a guess or a question?
It's up to the chair if he wants to entertain questions, and I know some of my colleagues have their hands up, so I don't want to interfere.
Okay, so I'll just go to the questions first, but happy to if anyone wants to hear more details. But so the director role, we're already getting great applicants for this position, actually including someone who was a former participant in the program, so really wanting to give back and knowing the work well. So that was so exciting to see that come in. And for recruitment, so this program, the eligible families are families who are at or below 50% of the area median income, who have children, so at least one child under 18 or are pregnant, and who are interested in working or wanting to increase their income. Those are the criteria. We are focusing on and purposely seeking to serve families and individuals most impacted by the pandemic, with an emphasis on families of color who were disproportionately harmed, and also, families who are homeless or at risk of experiencing homelessness or in subsidized housing, or otherwise struggling. So that will be who we're hoping to serve, and we'll be partnering with Newton organizations to help with recruitment, saying who could use this, who would be the families who could most benefit from this program. And also have help with, so we will ourselves be doing the sort of getting into the community outreach, going to the food drives, going to the diaper drives, going to places where we could connect with families in need, and working with partners to help sort of direct us to where we should do the recruitment. And also we have assistance from a recruiter who is experienced in, we've done recruitment in the Boston area for other work. And so we'll be working with those same people to support that. And I think those were the two questions that you didn't answer, Amanda. Are there other, did I miss anything?
I think you got them. I think that was excellent information, both Ms. Berman and Ms. Winning. Appreciate it. Let me go to other counselors, see what questions there are. And that should take us through the discussion. Councilor Greenberg, I have your hand up next, followed by President Albright. Councilor Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In reading the memo, the link to the proposed project doesn't work. And I don't know if anyone else experienced that. I tried on several computers, and every time I pressed the link, it said error. So could that be resent? Because I'd really like to know more about the project itself. And then I'm wondering, you said there's 50.
I'm sorry, let me hang on one second, Councilor Greenberg. Ms. Berman, looks like you're attending to that or going to check it out, make sure the link's appropriate.
Let me, Jacqueline,
Okay.
I think I'll send, Jacqueline, is it okay if I send you the link to the page?
Yes, and I
Okay.
can forward it to the committee.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's an easy one. We should. Thank you, Ms. Berman.
Thank
Councilor
you.
Greenberg, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Thank you, that's okay. So this program is for 50 families in Newton, correct? I understand that during the pandemic that there were at least 200 families in Newton that received rental assistance from Josephine McNeil, and that I think 50 is inadequate. I'm wondering how that number was chosen. I think there's a greater need out there, and I'm wondering why only 50 families that number was chosen. Thank you.
I can try to answer this piece. So when we put forward our proposal, we were trying to balance serving as many, as many people as we could, but with this a high quality one-on-one coaching long-term. So there would be an approach that people could have selected to go with, which would be lighter touch kind of service, maybe for shorter period of time that reached more people. The work that we've done over the years and have been successful with has been a sort of more intensive, higher touch, really partnering one-on-one with families for a sustained period of time. And we've seen really, with that approach, really transformational outcomes. And that's kind of the work we do, our sweet spot. We in the Boston area, we will have shorter term engagements, but the ideal and sort of our best approach to coaching is this longer term partnership. And so with that sort of high quality one-on-one individualized coaching approach, we also then wanted to add a cash incentive to support the work and actually bring the outcomes higher. And so balancing that as well, wanting to give an adequate amount to those families, that was how we landed on, sort of doing the math of that was how we landed on the 50.
May I, Mr. Chair? I'm just hoping that if you run into 52 families that need help.
Oh, yeah.
That you just won't have a firm line that, oh, we reached our 50 families.
Yes.
Help you.
Oh, absolutely. And it will be interesting to see. I think there's two sides. There's one of we're like, there'll be so many people, can we serve all? And there's also, we're worried, will we get to the 50? Even when there's a service provided, not everyone will want the service or be able to take it. So we're hoping to get to the 50. And I mean, we will get to the 50, that's the work, but we'll, if there's 52, yes, I think we're not gonna say you two can't join in. I think that we also anticipate with any program, and we know from experience, that we'll recruit there's some drop off. We work really hard to build a rapport right at the beginning so people sustain the contact, but there's some, for, you know, a variety of reasons, drop off. And if families start to engage and then they aren't and they can no longer, we'll continue to fill. So there'll always be the sort of max, the capacity of the 50. So over the course of the 2 years, you might actually be serving more than 50, and some might be for a year and another for, you know, for just a year time. But
Well,
that's
I'm very happy that the mayor has decided to invest in this program. I think it's so important, and I just wish it was more money, actually. But thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Greenberg. So, I mean, so the true limitation is going to be the monetary cap at the moment, right? As opposed to a specific number of families per month or something like that. Is that accurate?
Yes. Yeah, we'd have
Okay.
to hire more staff to do more work. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. President Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm wondering, do we know what the, 50 out of how many? Like, what, do we know that, like, the universe of families in Newton that would have needs of such a program? Do we know that number? I don't know,
I can
Amanda.
tell you that. I don't think we know that number for sure. We certainly, through the work that Megan does, and Megan, you can chime in with your comment on that. What Ashley just said about people really committing to this type of program is absolutely true. We may have a lot of families in need. They may not want to join a program that is so intensive, that has these kinds of check-ins, that requires them to make goals for their life, and then hit those goals and stay in the program. So I don't know if you would add anything besides that, Megan. We know we have a lot of families in need, but I don't know many of them will stick it out. Go ahead, Megan.
I think, when we talk about families in the program, we talk about the families that my staff work with every day. And so those families are, more often than not very low income. They are on the margin in our community. We, get referrals from the schools all the time, Newton Housing Authority and CDF. We also should remember that when people more often than not are impacted by low income poverty level, there is some level of trauma that has happened to them throughout their life, right? And some mental health issues. So there is, like people have mentioned, there's some, they do have to engage in the process. It can be a challenge, right, Ashley, for people to engage all the time consistently due to mental health and or trauma. So I look at it through different lenses, but we do have families and our numbers and social services can show that for sure.
That's good to know. Do you provide childcare as well as your one-on-one and whatever other services you provide?
We do not. And actually we've had a shift when we did more in-person work at some of our centers. We had sort of child areas sort of in the physical spaces where kids could play. So if parents were getting coaching, there was a safe kind of place for them to play, but not with a daycare attendant. But a lot of our work has moved remote, and families have said it's actually been easier for the childcare reasons, for some transportation reasons, to fit it in. And we anticipate that would stay, that could be the case, but we still will have the option to do in-person connections. But I think the ability to do work virtually has helped with some of the barriers to connecting.
Okay. I would love to hear as time goes along in Newton, whether having childcare as a component would help or not, just to keep an eye on that problem.
Yeah. Great question.
It was heartening to hear that someone who's been through the program was applying to be director of this. So that sort of answered a little bit of my question, is what happens to these people after the program? It seems like you've had some success.
Yes, and we had another person a Newton resident, and now who had gone through the program, who reached out and said, I heard the mayor's announcement. I'm so excited. I will advocate. I will, I'll recruit, who just felt so passionately about it. Yeah, we've had, in our longer term programs and our more intensive programs, we've seen families double and triple their income, who increase their credit score, enhance their savings, buy homes even. So some really, and what we've seen when we follow up families after graduation, the gains are maintained, income gains are maintained. So it's not just, and that's the work of the program, is to sort of set people up so that after that they can continue on their journey. And so we have seen that in the data that we've collected and the evidence that we've collected.
Interesting. So that leads me really to my last question, which is maybe to Commissioner Walsh, or you, I'm not sure who, but if we see that this program is so successful and we still have families in need, which no doubt we will have, is anybody going to be looking at this to say, okay, this program was really successful, Newton residents really benefited, they're full contributing members of society now, maybe we should keep this program going in Newton and not stop it after 2 years? Is anybody going to be watching this program from that perspective?
Yes, of course we will. Balancing the fact that it's a lot of money and there's no more commitment for money at the end, as Councilor Laredo had said, we absolutely will be looking at that. I didn't know a lot about empath. Commissioner Youngblood knew everything about empath because that's was her background. As I've learned how this is just transformational, when I watch some of the testimonies of the people that their life has changed, as Ashley just pointed out, forever, that, to actually generational poverty, it made a change. That costs a lot of money. It isn't a cheap investment, but it is a small number of people, but put against this sort of life-changing experience, we all got very excited in the human services side of my department that we could be a part of this. So the evaluation project is very important. We've touched on that a little. You'll get to meet Christina Citino, I'm sure, in the future. She's remarkable, and we will. I am always looking for additional funding sources, whether it's grants or, anything to try to help our department and our Newton residents who honestly need it the most. So yes, we will always be looking that way.
Well, some of us, go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and I hope I don't think I'm speaking out of place, but we will also be looking, we're also looking for good programs. And what we're especially excited about with Newton is we are piloting. We've for years been doing the economic mobility coaching and seeing wonderful outcomes. Adding this piece of the guaranteed monthly, a predictable cash incentive, we think is going to just be even better. And we're getting to pilot this here. And so if we are seeing also that this is really amplifying outcomes, we'll want to let funders know that this is a program we're supporting. And so we'll also be looking for that.
Yeah. One of the things I was just going to say that some of us as counselors have been thinking about, and actually one has already talked to the mayor about creating a Newton foundation, like there's a Boston Foundation to fund community efforts. And this might be something that could help spur that on because it seems like a really worthwhile program. So I'm done. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for doing the program.
Thank you, President Albright. Councilor Wright.
Thank you, Chair Krinsman. So I too, let me pull up my notes. I couldn't get to that document, and Ms. McNeil has talked to me about how great this program is. But I'm looking at it, so it's the project is 1.6 million, and 300,000 goes for cash incentives, and then you list for the other, 1.2 million. I'd like to see more of a breakout because the way it reads here, it's like, oh my God, what exactly are we paying for? So, because it's talking about, recruitment, marketing, office equipment. The other cost is understandable. So it sounds like, it almost sounded like the program is just going off the ground, but it sounds like the program is elsewhere, or is this just brand new, or is just this team's brand new, or how does that work?
So the approach that we're bringing, the mobility mentoring coaching is, we've been doing for almost 15 years. The Newton, the pilot, the Newton project is new because we do that work in various settings. And so we'd have to be hiring to do this program in Newton. And it is the piece of it that's unique, or that sort of is the new piece, is the cash directly into the hands of families. We have had a piece of our work, which is incentivizing goal setting, and that will continue. But this additional cash is the sort of add-on.
Yeah,
new
and the
piece.
cash part is fine. It just seems like
Yeah.
there's a lot of money, and then you're listening, office equipment, and usually if you have a program, you don't think that you're actually buying office equipment.
Right.
And so what would be helpful, and maybe it was part of, that I can't get to right now, is saying, there's 50 families, they're going to get 3 hours of financial counseling a week. They get, for how many weeks, and things like that. So we kind of see what this money is going to, because this list doesn't really provide any of that. So that kind of information would be very helpful.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And I'll also just add, I think the sort of equipment stuff was minimal. There is the bulk of it is for staff time, and we do hire, we want to pay staff well, and so that we can recruit and hire really experienced staff, and so that and retain them for the course of the program. In human services, there is a lot of burnout and turnover. The staff undergo a lot of training, and ongoing training. And we know that relationship, that sort of stable relationship with a family, so that they're meeting with the same mentor for the 2 years, is really important to the outcomes as well. So that's a lot of our investment is in the staff and the staff.
So is there any chance that some of your other programs are ending and that we would get some of the staff from there, or do you have to start from the ground up?
For this one, we do have to hire. We have had that in the past, where it's like beautifully one program's ending and another one's launching and people move over. But even in that case, we still have to pay the salaries for those years. It's usually when a project ends, so does the funding for it. So this one we are hiring. We're having to hire. We have some we have some staff who may move over, they're internal candidates, experienced, but still we will need to fill those roles then. So the salary piece kind of remains.
So for the 2 years, if you could provide, how many hours of this type of, financial, this one is, family, emotional support, whatever, kind of see what it is, because what we received didn't have any of that information in.
Okay. Yes. I think I don't know how to get information, but I'll talk with the people I know to see what the best way to give more detail will be. Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Councilor Rader, I was going to come to you next, but I see Councilor Ryan has her hand up. Okay. Councilor Ryan?
Got to get back in the game here. I know right now it's very hard to get staff in human service. My background is in human service for 24 years before I came to the council, and still I kind of go back to my old company and help out once in a while. But mine is more of a statement, is having worked in the field for years, that this is what's always, to me, has been lacking, missing. We let people get to the point where they would come to my company and end up in congregate living shelters, and then have to start all over and do Section 8 housing searches and get health care again through Mass Health. There's no money involved whatsoever. There would be food stamps. So this, it more or less is, you go to the bottom and you get help, and then when you get some help, you cut loose totally. And we used to do some toolboxes and follow people for a while, but I did read the packet and I know enough about this and the need for it and why it just will work so good. And I mean, everyone's not going to make it. We know that. That's just the way it is. But the fact that there is some success and, to me, it's a safety net at a certain time in people's lives where this kind of help can help them go forward until they would reach somebody like me in my previous employment. So I'm all behind this, and it's too bad it's only 50 families, but that's the way it is, how much money and how much staff and what we can do right now. And let's see what happens when we're coming to the end with the money and the program, what we might be able to do as a city later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Ryan. Councilor Laredo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me start off by making it quite clear that I think an intensive coaching model is a very important model. And I think from what I know, and I'm not in social services professionally, is a good model because it provides kind of one-on-one or at least a direct counseling, which I think is very important. I actually think that offering direct financial incentives is a really interesting and good idea to at least try out and see what the effectiveness is. I don't know if the number you have is too high, not enough, or just right, kind of the Goldilocks theory, but there's been a fair amount written out there, as I'm sure you're aware, about the importance of providing actual cash incentives to encourage certain behaviors. So I think that's great. I have to be upfront that I'm a little concerned about how we got into this program in the first place. And Councilor Greenberg identified that I think we had 200 families that needed rental assistance during COVID, and that's obviously 200 too many. We wouldn't want anyone to need rental assistance, but someone who needs rental assistance doesn't necessarily mean that they're appropriate for your program. There might have been a lot of folks who were working, are very capable of managing their finances, but lost their job for an array of reasons, such as taking care of a sick parent or kid. So I'm really want to start from Commissioner Walsh and Ms. Berman. Did you identify 50 or 75 or 100 families who would benefit from this program before we went out and contracted? Or are we trying to search for these families? They may exist. They may exist in greater numbers, but we don't know. And I'm curious about how you got there.
I think
we did not identify the people ahead of time. Go ahead, Amanda. No, we did not have
Why not?
The proposals.
Why not? Yeah.
Go ahead, Amanda.
I think Megan said it very well. I think all day, every day, she and her team, myself, my team, people are struggling very intensely throughout Newton and this region, and they have been for years. And it's been no surprise that there are hundreds, Councilor Laredo, of families in Newton that have been struggling for a long time. I'm looking at the most recent CHAZ data from HUD. There are specifically, according to CHAZ, there are right now 310 families that are at or below 30% AMI between small and large families. That doesn't even include elderly households. That's just small and large families with no persons over 62 years of age. So that is just the data itself, and that's probably an undercount. So right there, the data is showing us that there's hundreds of families who are at risk of homelessness, essentially at or below 30% AMI. Not to mention the hundreds of families that struggled greatly throughout COVID and relied not only on the city funds to get them through, but also on state funds like RAFT and other programs. And things really have not gotten much better for many people. We've been seeing a lot of evictions, the housing crisis increases. So I think 50 families, it's not a matter of are they out there. I think as Ashley has said, and Commissioner Walsh and Megan, that are there finding the right families who are ready to do this hard work, this intensive work. And I think given the intense need, I'm confident that Empath is going to be able to identify those families.
So I guess, Ms. Berman, let me respond to that. I have no doubt that we have families in need in this city and not insignificant number. And I've always felt that many of them are silent, in that we as a general population either don't see them or don't know them or don't know the struggles that they may be facing internally. So I recognize there's a real problem, but I still come back to, this is a very particularized program. This is not for someone who might have, mental health issues that prevent them from working, I presume. This is designed, from what I read in the materials, to help people empower themselves. And so I'll just lay out, and we don't have to debate it any further. I think it would have been preferable, and I would hope we do it on a going forward basis, that we have a better sense of how many folks we could potentially serve before we go out there. And that could have led to a different result. It might have been then, if you saw that magnitude of number, that you would have gone back to the mayor and said, we need an extra $1 million out of ARPA funds for this. You might not have gotten them, I agree, Commissioner Walsh, but you could at least have made the case. But if you don't have that information to start with, we're taking a shot in the dark. And so we just don't know.
If I could just kind of respond just quickly to that,
Sure.
Councilor Laredo. So in my role as the Director of Social Services, I oversee 2.5 case managers. And we keep a very clear, we have a system of our notes, we have a system of contacts, we have in our intake, we have their income, how many children they have, what their goals are when they're working with us. And I can confidently say that we have, looking back, 50 families, that we can think of. And part of our work, Counselor, is going and sitting right beside the families we work with and helping them connect to this kind of program. So I do think that we do have the people. I think if we said we have this program, are you going to be a good fit for it? Then the people get excited and then we don't have a program. That could feel hard.
I guess there's a little bit of chicken and egg there, and I get that. Look, I don't want to belabor it. I'm just trying to make the point, and I get, Ms. Kendi, that you're dealing with people on the ground. You see them day to day in a way that at least I don't, even as a counselor. So I respect that, but I do think it's important from a planning perspective, from a financial perspective, that we make those assessments based on numbers and not just a kind of a sense of feeling and appropriate empathy, because I think we make better decisions, frankly, and when we really use raw numerical data. The other thing I'm just going to express a concern about, I'm always concerned with a program when we're spending money and we are the ones spending it to essentially hire brand new people to do something for a 2-year period. I know you may be getting people internally who are trained, but it sounds like you're going to have to do some training. And for lack of a better word, we're paying for that. And, on one hand, that's great. They're going to be well trained and they're going to do a good job. I'd like if we can in the future, if we're not paying for that kind of hiring and training, but rather going to a team that has an established staff ready to hit the ground running and then can use those staff with some supplementation of work for us. That's not meant as a criticism of the program, but I do think we ought to be looking at that. And I'll just leave it that I'm very glad we got the answers to the questions. I very much appreciate the hard work that's going into that. And I'm going to ask from someone in this committee to at some point hold the item so we can come back, and I'll ask Commissioner Walsh, when do you think it'd be a good time? Is it 6 months? Is it 9 months? When's a good check-in when we can see how this is going and where we should go next.
Yeah, absolutely. First, I just want to make a comment on how we made this decision, because just to respond to, and yes, I'm not going to debate. I really appreciate and respect all of your comments and take them to heart, right? Because this is a lot of money. But I do want to remember that this was a community needs assessment. And through that community needs assessment is when we made the decision that we really wanted to choose not just short-term incentives, which we did and the mayor did, but also a program, a transformational program. So that was the thought behind this. It wasn't, just knowing the need as Megan just described. I would say Amanda's better at this than me, but I would say 9 months, Amanda, is a good check-in time. Would you agree?
I'd say a year.
There you go.
I mean, we need that time to actually be able to come back with some substantive data and progress reports.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Could I just respectfully suggest that since it's going to be the end of the term, Councilor Krinsman, and it be put on perhaps in December, and then if it's not ready, that you redocket it, or I'll be happy to redocket it, assuming I'm still here, in January, if that's okay with you, but I would like it on in December as a placeholder. Understanding that might not be the appropriate time, and fully comfortable with moving it if it's not. Thank you.
I just respond to a couple more of the questions or comments that Councilor Laredo made. I think it's important to remind everyone that these are ARPA funds, federal ARPA funds that the city received to specifically support those that were most impacted by COVID. And we know that to be not only our most vulnerable low-income residents, but disproportionately people of color. And this program is specifically targeted to support just that, those who have been extremely impacted by COVID and disproportionately are those of color. And Empath is very well experienced and ready to go in terms of seeking out those types of households and families that meet that criteria. I think that we all felt that this program and could use a lot more money, but there's a lot of competition for the ARPA funds, as we know. So I think that Health and Human Services and myself, at least in planning, and Director Heath would have been happy to see more money go towards such an important program like this that is meant to support our low-income residents and those who are really kind of on the edge every day. And I think that while it seems like this, new staff training, you've got a core program it's a tried and true program for years and years that Empath has been running and strengthening and, innovating. And, like any grant program, when new programs come up, they're going to have to expand and contract. So I think, Ashley can speak more to this, but, expanding and contracting and hiring and pulling staff back, that's just the nature of grant funded programs and nonprofit programming to begin with. It's not that this program's being invented out of, thin air and everybody has to get up to speed. There is a core group at Empath that knows how to run a program like this. You're bringing on the necessary people as this new program in Newton is coming to be. And hence there's a need for more boots on the ground to actually implement in Newton. I don't think that should be seen as a negative at all in terms of how this program is going to run. And to be quite honest, I don't know. I think any of the programs that would be worth this level of funding would be similar, operating in a similar manner. Again, it's grant funded. Until the grants are there, they're not going to have the staff on board to carry out an unknown.
All right, I see we have one more question. Councillor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, mostly observations from me after hearing the discussion. So I'm really excited about this program. It's obviously a pilot program, but serving a very underserved population within our community that definitely could use the help. But I think it's fair to say this is a pilot, and everyone I think agrees on that and understands that that's what it is. This is, in both in its scope in terms of the number of people that it can serve, in terms of the duration. It's going to be giving us more information about how we can help people not only in Newton but in other places by trying out these methods. And we might want it to do more than that, but that's it. It's okay that that's what it's doing given the resources available. I hope personally, I hope it can be continued after the 2 years. I hope we figure out a way to do that. Council President Albright kind of talked about some of that. We might, get creative between the public and the private side and coming up with money, and there might be ways to do that. I hope we can. I don't know if we will be able to, but I certainly hope so. I think Ms. Berman just addressed this, but I mean, the staffing model makes complete sense. I don't know how you would do it a different way, because it's much like anything else. If you were opening a new restaurant, if you were opening a new library branch or something like that, you're not going to pull all of the people from your existing thing that you had at a different location that already existed. You're going to need to add new staff to deal with either customers or, in this case, clients that you're helping. You're adding a workload, and you're going to need additional people to do that work. So I don't see how that could be a point of confusion or a line of critique, really. And I completely agree that there's more people than just 50 families that could benefit from something like this, and to that extent, again, we all understand it's a pilot program. If we want more people to be able to do programs like this and for longer, then we should be seeking the funding, coming up with the funding to do that, and to add more people into a program, not to give them a lighter, lesser program, but coming up with enough money to actually provide these services for everyone who's eligible and interested and wants this level of intense help. And I'm out there trying to get us additional revenue, and some people are not, right? And that's okay. That's your opinion, or however you want to play it. But I don't think it's a fair critique to be saying, well, we should be extending this permanently and we should be extending this to hundreds more families, but also I have no interest in getting out there and convincing the public that the city needs more revenue. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm sure everyone knows what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Humphrey. Councilor Ryan?
Yeah, I just want to finish by saying, we may think there's all these families that are eligible for this, or people are eligible for this, but then you have to look at the other side of it is, are they willing to do the work? This isn't just a social service program where we're throwing $250 at somebody and telling them to check in a month or every month. There's a lot of work that has to be done on this, and you have to be willing to dig yourself out of a hole that probably you didn't create. It was the circumstances of COVID or whatever. I'm going to end by saying that I'm sure Megan and her staff identified the people that could do this and could commit to this and this intense type of a program. We used to have people come into our shelters and we could identify right away what circumstances people came into, whether it be a spouse left them with a couple of kids and everything just started to go out the window. And we'd know the ones that would want to just, where do I sign up for everything I can do, not do to get out of here and to start over again and take care of my family. So I'm sure that Megan and her staff have identified these people. And that's how we get the most out of these type of programs and can make them last longer in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ryan. I want to echo the sentiments that we definitely appreciate the written responses in advance, the time this evening, and the responses we got this evening. I'm happy to try and revisit this towards the end of the year if it makes sense. If we don't yet have sufficient information, then we won't be able to, but I'll definitely make a note to try and revisit this towards the end of the year. Having said all that, did someone want to make a motion to hold?
Hold.
Councilor Ryan has moved hold. Any discussion on that motion? Great. All those in favor of hold, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, I believe we are 7-0 because I think Councilor Baker is not actually with us. And I think that's it. That's it, right? Is that it? Okay.
Yes, that is it.
Just make sure. Okay. Committee members, hang on one second. Those of you who joined us for any reason, thank you very much. Appreciate it. We need to talk a little bit about our schedule, so you all feel free to log off and go about your business. But thank you very much again. While I have you all here, I want to quickly ask, April 5th is Passover. So I think we're not going to be able to meet as a committee that night. I think Jacqueline will send around a poll, but I just wanted to maybe see if folks are available the alternate 2 Wednesdays in April. And I say that because I think the second of our 2 meetings is also during April break. Maybe everyone's around that week and maybe that's fine. But I just wanted to see if folks had availability, if folks had availability on the 2 Wednesdays that we're not currently scheduled to meet in case we want to reschedule either or both of our meetings for those days.
So I do want to state that the school committee is that following Wednesday, and also potentially moving that second meeting could interfere depending on the date of the budget address by the mayor.
Well, we should wait and see what happens on Wednesday, next Tuesday, because the whole budget schedule is going to be screwed up if the override doesn't pass.
Yeah, and I think that's why I don't want to necessarily decide on anything tonight. I just wanted to see if people could, if they are available, if you could hold those nights available so that we have some flexibility in when we try to meet. Does that make sense?
Can you just repeat them again just to make sure I get them in my calendar?
Every Wednesday in April. No, really, I think we're scheduled to meet on the 5th and the 19th. So I'm talking about the 12th and the 26th. I have those.
And you said that the 5th is the one you think is not going to happen?
The 5th is Passover.
Yeah. Although 3Ps will be canceled that night.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we won't be able to meet on the 5th. And I'm trying to see if we can meet on the 12th and or the 26th. And I mentioned the 19th because that's school vacation week when we're supposed to meet.
I can make all those dates, but does anybody think we should do a wellness check on Counselor Baker? He's just.
No, I think it was just that he had logged into 2 different devices and probably didn't realize he was still logged into one of them.
Oh, if you say so, okay.
He's currently picking Sally up from the airport.
He said he might not be able to rejoin us.
Okay.
So it's the 12th and the 26th, or are we also doing the 19th?
We'll hopefully in advance of our next meeting, we'll know for sure, but I just want folks to have those ones available. And then we'll decide before our next meeting when the 2 meetings will be in April.
Both of these finance and programs and services ruining my traditional 4th week of the month where I don't have meetings.
I know. I'm not happy.
And
about
there's
it,
a
I'm sorry.
historic commission too that I have to go to. So
Don't call it a job for nothing, Counselor.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, somebody asked me to give them the link the other day for how much everyone gets paid in the city by name. And I found that my name was on there like everyone else on the council. And I was like, here you go. Here's me.
Did you highlight that section?
Here's a big bucks I'm making.
Yeah.
Did they think we were being paid too much?
I think it was other people they had concerns about, not me, probably.
Well, and I think there's this, is the meeting over? I think there's this idea that somehow government's not transparent when all you got to do is look.
True.
I think we are now ready to end our meeting. Again, I just wanted to put that out there for scheduling purposes. Appreciate everyone's flexibility. This time it's not exclusively my fault, like it was in February. But thank you all, and appreciate the discussion tonight. We can adjourn and have a wonderful night.
Okay, can I ask a question first?
All right.
Who's Richard Phone?
Mr. Phone, would you like to tell us who you are?
Richard Phone?
He's taken Lyle hostage.
And that Mark's come back too.
Yeah, but I'm wondering who that other.
Am I the only one who got cut off, or is it something about me? I mean, I'll
Oh,
take.
see, his thing did freeze. That's what okay. I was like, that's a very, very stoic expression that he's doing for quite a while there.
Froze, Mark.
Oh, I froze. I had no idea. I apologize. I don't know what the heck happened.
You disappeared from my screen, so I thought you had logged off when we were going to discuss our schedule.
Well, I'm so glad to be back among my colleagues from programs and services. So anyways, I'm sure if I missed something, someone will fill me in.
Well,
You're
we
back
just
just in
doing-
time for us to adjourn. We were
Yeah.
just talking about
Alright.
schedule because, Mark, April 5th is Passover. So we
Right.
think the three committees that would regularly meet that night are going to have to reschedule probably.
Yeah, I
So we were
alerted
discussing
Susan to
that.
that a couple of weeks ago. Unless you all want to join me at my Seder, which is perfectly fine.
You have programs and services at your Seder?
A Seder
I
is a
can't
program.
promise you it's going to be entertaining, but we'll do our best. So,
I think a Seder is both a program and a service.
oh Josh, that is good. I'm sorry I don't get the humor on this committee on a regular basis. So
We do have fun. We do have fun.
I'm sure
People
you-
come to programs and services for good Jew humor.
they don't do that at facilities. I don't know why. Good night, all. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.